For this discussion, I have probably three broad points that I want to touch on. The first is definitional, I guess, how we talk about witchcraft. It's a big part of it. The second is maybe more sociological, and how witchcraft works itself out in the ethnographic record, and how it sort of works itself out in terms of social relations. And then the third is taking more of a symbolic anthropology approach and thinking about witchcraft in more metaphorical terms. Let's start with definitions. First of all, the word witch has a long history in not just American culture, but Western culture. You can read up on that history and the Spanish Inquisition, and the witch hunts of the Middle Ages, leading up even to the witch hunts that we had here in the colonies of America. But beyond that, we have television shows, we have movie characters and book characters. We have pop songs, we have the Eagles singing about witchy women, and we have Stevie Nicks, singing about Rhiannon, and you can hear that every time you go to the grocery store, right? So witches they're taboo, but they're also sort of beloved in our culture. And so then we can convolute that even more and think about, neo-paganism and the modern Wiccan movements, and the way that witch has been sort of appropriated by that culture to have a positive connotation, to talk about maybe, like I said, maybe more of a neo-pagan or a more nature-based religion. And then it's been applied to speaking of nature-based religions, it's been applied to some historical examples of herbalism and nature-based animism, maybe, that was sort of lying dormant underneath Christian culture in America and in Europe. All of these are legitimate uses of the word witch, but they will completely confuse you when you go to study witches in anthropology, because we don't think of witches as an equivalent to shamans, sorcerers, or diviners or priests. They're not. It's a different kind of definition. So the first part of our definition is we want to think about witches as a less of a kind of person and more as a phenomenon. I've shown you videos. We can find a video of a sorcerer. We can find a video, or we can go meet a shaman. We can meet an herbalist. I can go down the road and I can pay someone to read my palm. I can meet that person. Those are all identified practitioners of religion, and that's why they got their own special chapter together. Witches, on the other hand, the first part of the definition is that, witchcraft is not necessarily a person. A witch is not a person. A witch and witchcraft is a phenomenon. So we can identify clearly, and usually they self-identify themselves. Shamans, sorcerers, diviners are people who will happily identify themselves. They'll happily take money, maybe, or they'll happily take part in rituals of healing, openly and publicly. Witches, on the other hand, we don't know who they are. We just know that they're out there. And so witchcraft becomes more of a phenomenon than an actual practice or an actual kind of person. Witches are out there, and we know they're out there. But we don't necessarily know who they are, because witchcraft is an anonymous phenomenon. Next, the thing about witches is that they often themselves don't know that they're witches. You can be unconscious of your own witchcraft because it is inherited. This would be a third point. It is inherited. So witches, unlike sorcerers and shamans, they don't learn their craft, they inherit it. And it's an ability that they may or may not know they have. And it is thought to be primarily psychic, as in they don't perform a ritual, they simply use their own inherited being to create magic through their heads, to bring about these changes that is always going to be malevolent, a malevolent magic, right? It's always going to bring about negative changes. So at this point, we know they're out there. We don't know who they are. They may not know who they are. The reason they may not know who they are is because they would have had to inherit it from their parents, and they may or may not know if their parents are witches. And they can use just their thinking to project dangerous magic. And then the final factor here that all this hinges on is that because it is unconscious and it is inherited, not learned, it could happen unintentionally. One could be a witch and not even realize it. This is really important, bringing us to the next phase of the discussion, which is the sociological aspect of witches. How do we figure out who the witches are? How do we know there are witches present? And what do we do about it?